There is an assumption so widely held that almost nobody stops to question it, that being poor is simply the absence of money. That if you earn less, you spend less, and the math balances itself out at a lower level. But that assumption is wrong, and the degree to which it is wrong has profound consequences for millions of people navigating low-income financial environments every single day. Being poor is not just having less. In measurable, documented mathematical terms, being poor is more expensive. The scale does not balance at a lower level, it tips. And it tips consistently, structurally, and in ways that most financial conversations never directly address. This is not a statement about lifestyle choices or spending habits. It is a statement about architecture. The architecture of a financial system that charges more at the bottom than it does at the top, quietly, consistently, and by design. The minimum wage trap is not a metaphor. It is a structural reality built into how goods, services, credit, and time are priced in modern economies. When your income sits at or near the minimum wage threshold, you do not simply have access to the same financial system as everyone else at a smaller scale. You have access to a different financial system entirely. Consider the most basic example. A person earning a higher income can buy in bulk, purchasing larger quantities of food, household supplies, and essentials at a lower per unit cost. The item is identical, the store may be the same, but the price per unit is not. A person earning minimum wage, with limited cash flow and no financial buffer, frequently cannot afford the upfront cost of bulk purchasing. So they buy smaller quantities more often, at a higher per unit price. Not because they made a poor decision, because their cash flow structure did not allow the decision that would have cost less. This is what constrained cash flow looks like in practice. Income arrives thin and leaves fast. Rent, food, transportation, and bills draining it faster than it accumulates. There is no room for the upfront investment that would reduce the ongoing cost. The buffer never forms. The premium never stops. Same person, same store, same product. Two completely different price points, determined not by choice, not by intelligence, not by discipline, but by the structure of the cash flow available to each buyer at the moment of purchase. Economists have a name for this. They call it the poverty premium. The measurable additional cost that low-income individuals pay for the same goods and services that higher-income individuals access more cheaply. And it does not operate in one category. It operates across housing, transportation, credit, banking, and healthcare simultaneously. The poverty premium is not accidental. It is the predictable output of a system in which access to lower prices is consistently gated behind upfront capital. The gate exists, the lock is real, and the key, in almost every case, is a financial threshold that minimum wage income places just out of reach. A better credit score unlocks lower interest rates. A larger deposit unlocks a better apartment in a safer neighborhood with lower transportation costs. A car unlocks access to cheaper grocery stores further from the urban core. Each of these advantages requires an initial financial threshold, and the minimum wage earner sits below most of them simultaneously. This is the architecture of the trap. Each rung of the financial stability ladder requires the one below it to already be in place. Without the buffer, you cannot access the bulk price. Without the credit history, you cannot access the lower interest rate. Without the deposit, you cannot access the better location. The ladder is real, but so is the distance to the first rung. The mathematics of the poverty premium are striking when examined directly. Studies conducted across the United Kingdom and the United States have estimated that low-income households pay between $400 and $1,000 more per year than higher-income households for equivalent goods and services. That is not money wasted on poor choices. That is money extracted by the structural mechanics of low-income financial access. Now apply the same logic to credit. The average payday loan carries an annualized interest rate of between 300 and 400%. The average credit card available to someone with a thin or damaged credit file carries a rate of between 24 and 36% annually. A person with an established credit history may access a personal loan at 6 to 10%. The same borrowing need, an unexpected car repair, a medical bill, a gap between paychecks, cost dramatically different amounts depending entirely on which financial tier the borrower occupies. The emergency is identical, the cost of responding to it is not. And that difference is not a reflection of the borrower, it is a reflection of the system they are borrowing within. The lower the income, the higher the cost of accessing money. The higher the cost of accessing money, the harder it is to accumulate the buffer that would reduce that cost. The cycle is self-reinforcing. It does not require anyone to make a bad decision. It sustains itself through structure alone. The same loan, the same amount, the same repayment period, paid back at a fraction of the cost by the higher income borrower, and at a dramatically higher total cost by the minimum wage borrower. Not because one person is more responsible than the other, because they are operating inside different financial tiers with different pricing structures applied to identical needs. Lower income means a higher cost of money. It also means a higher cost of goods and a higher cost of housing. Add those three premiums together and apply them consistently over months and years, and the compounding gap between the cost of low-income life and the cost of higher-income life becomes one of the most significant and least discussed financial forces operating in the lives of working people. At a systemic level, this is not a coincidence. The financial products and pricing structures that extract the most from the people with the least did not emerge by accident. They emerged because low-income consumers represent a captive market, one with urgent needs, limited alternatives, and insufficient leverage to demand better terms. Payday lenders do not operate in wealthy neighborhoods. Rent-to-own furniture stores do not target high-income zip codes. Check cashing services cluster in areas where people cannot access traditional banking. The geography of financial extraction follows the geography of financial vulnerability with remarkable and deliberate consistency. The system is not passive, it is oriented. It flows in a specific direction, from the financial vulnerability of low-income consumers toward the revenue streams of financial products designed specifically for markets where alternatives are few and urgency is high. Understanding that orientation is not pessimism, it is accuracy. Financial vulnerability and financial extraction overlap in a very specific and measurable way. Where vulnerability is highest, extraction tends to be highest. Where alternatives are fewest, pricing power is greatest. The captive market is not a theory. It is a documented, geographic, demographic reality that operates at scale across modern economies. Understanding this reframes the conversation entirely. The question is not why low-income individuals make poor financial decisions. The research consistently shows that low-income individuals make financial decisions of comparable rationality to anyone else, often under significantly more cognitive pressure and with significantly fewer options available to them. The more accurate question is why the system charges them more for making the same decisions, and what that structural premium costs over the course of a financial lifetime. The shift from the behavioral frame to the structural frame is not a small semantic adjustment. It is a fundamentally different way of seeing the problem, and it leads to fundamentally different responses. A person earning minimum wage for 10 years, paying the poverty premium across housing, credit, groceries, transportation, and banking, may pay tens of thousands of dollars more than a higher income peer for an equivalent standard of living over that same period. That gap was not created by behavior. It was created by structure. And the difference between those two explanations matters enormously, both for how individuals understand their own financial reality and for how systems get designed and reformed. This is the architecture of the minimum wage trap. Not a single mechanism, but an interlocking set of structural thresholds, each one pricing low-income access higher than high-income access, each one reinforcing the next, each one operating quietly enough that the aggregate cost rarely gets named directly or calculated in full. Calling this a behavioral problem produces behavioral solutions: advice, discipline, education. Calling it a structural problem produces structural analysis, and from structural analysis, more accurate and more effective responses. Both the individual navigating the system and anyone attempting to improve it benefit from understanding which kind of problem they are actually dealing with. The minimum wage trap is not a trap because minimum wage is low. It is a trap because the system surrounding low income is architected in a way that makes low income progressively more expensive over time, extracting more, offering less, and compounding the distance between the bottom of the income ladder and the first rung of genuine financial stability. Naming that architecture clearly is the first step. Understanding its mechanics precisely is the second. And making decisions that minimize exposure to its most expensive components, wherever real options exist to do so, is the third. Not a complete solution to a structural problem, but a real, measurable, and meaningful place to begin. The minimum wage trap stays in place partly because its mechanics are rarely explained directly, and partly because the costs it generates are distributed across so many categories that no single line item reveals the full picture. Understanding the system is the first rung, and the first rung is where everything that follows begins. If this video gave you a clearer picture of why low income costs more than most people realize, take a moment to like it. It helps this kind of structural, research-backed financial education reach the people who need it most. If you know someone working hard at a low income and wondering why the numbers never seem to add up the way they should, share this with them. Because understanding the architecture of the system you are inside is one of the most powerful tools available for navigating it more effectively. And if you want to keep exploring the hidden mechanics, behavioral economics, and structural realities that shape financial outcomes for real people in real financial environments, subscribe, because that is exactly what this channel is built to deliver. One honest and well-researched video at a time.